Well, what's up, worship leaders? It's just you and me on the podcast today. We don't have a guest or an interview. I just wanted to hop on and chat a little bit about rehearsals. Hopefully, we all rehearse in some way or another. And so I want to talk about rehearsals, specifically why they might not be so good, why they might suck. This was a blog post originally that I wrote a couple of years ago about rehearsals, basically about some things that I had to learn to overcome to make my rehearsals better because I kind of hit a point where um, I didn't I didn't want to be at rehearsals and my team didn't want to be at rehearsals and they weren't going very well. Like we'd show up and we'd play and we'd go home and on Sunday morning it was kind of like we didn't rehearse and I realized I needed to make some changes because I wanted my team to want to be there, but I didn't even want to be there, and I was the leader. And so, if I needed to lead the way in wanting to be there and um, doing it right. And so, I kind of pinpointed 5 things that I needed to do, and I've used this with coaching clients, throughout the last couple of years as well. And so, just wanted to, yeah, I'll, give you these 5 things. Before we get there, though, let me tell you about my new book. It's called House Music: Prompts for the Worship Songwriter. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. Listen, this book is for you if you are a songwriter or an aspiring songwriter. It's over 100 prompts for the worship songwriter. You could spend the next 2 years writing a song a week out of this book, and it'll help you take a deep dive into scripture, but it'll also help you capture the unique voice of your church. And your church absolutely has a unique voice. Like there are things your pastor says all the time. There are, scriptures that your small group keeps going back to, their promises you keep believing as a church body. And you should capture those for your church. Songwriting is an incredible way to pastor your church. And I'll get into that more later on, on another podcast, I'm sure. But this book will help you do it. Its official release date is February 23rd. So mark your calendar. It'll be available, digital on, digital or physical copies then. But if you want to pre-order, you can pre-order the digital version today. You can do it today. You can find the link in any of our social media bios or in the podcast notes, or if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put that in the description. When you pre-order, send me a copy of your receipt and I'll send you like 10 prompts so you don't have to wait to get started. You can go ahead and get started. And I'll also send you a couple of recent interviews I did with worship writers. You don't want to miss out on those. They were really great, really informative. Yeah, but if you'd rather a physical copy, I get that. Those release on February 23rd as well. So you can't pre-order the physical ones, but you can the digital ones. So if you want to be one of the first to dive in, the digital copy is the way to go. Okay, so 5 reasons your rehearsals suck and how to fix them. Okay, so the first reason, this might seem obvious to some of you guys, but I'm telling you, the more worship leaders I talk to, the more I realize it's not obvious to everyone. Here it is. You are unprepared. You're unprepared, and that's why your rehearsals are bad. Listen, if you are the leader and you don't take time to learn the songs or get there early to set up or have an idea of what transitions are going to be like, then your team won't either. And a lack of preparation tells your team that you don't care, which begs the question, why should they? Like, why should they care if you don't? Like, if you're not willing to learn the song ahead of time, you're not willing to learn your part or make sure that you can sing it in the right key or hit that note. And I get that, on occasion you'll go into a rehearsal and you're still working things out a little bit, but that shouldn't be the norm, right? The norm should be, I know what's happening, and being able to explain that to everyone else. So how do you fix that? If you're regularly unprepared, well, I mean, pretty obviously, make a point to be prepared. Like, know your songs backward and forward when you get there. Get to rehearsal early to set up. Serve your team by setting up as much as you can for them to have plans in place for musical moments, for transitions, all that. You basically care about your rehearsal, care about what it's going to be like, care about um, honoring the people that are serving with you. Because listen, rehearsal is important, and if you don't do it well in rehearsal, that's going to show up on Sunday. If you don't rehearse well, your Sundays aren't going to be as good as they could be. And that's not a performing for people thing as much as it is a performing for God thing. Like, I want what I bring to the Lord to be an incredible offering, and I know you do too. So you care about your rehearsals, prepare for them, and set your team up for success as well. Make sure that they have the songs early enough to be able to practice them before rehearsal. That's something I'm big on. Is practice is what happens before rehearsal. So if you can excuse me, if you can get that into your team's mind, that practice is where you figure out your part, and rehearsal is where we put the parts together. That's another thing that will make your rehearsals way better. But prepare, and prepare for your team as well. Set them up for success. Reason number two: your rehearsals might suck. You're more task driven than people driven. This is probably the number one thing for me. I'm very task driven, very goal oriented. I have goals, personally, goals for the church, goals for worship leader coaching, goals for more books I want to write, how many books I want to sell, all sorts of things I've got goals for. And so I have to stop all the time because I just want to get things done. And that absolutely comes out in my rehearsal. What I found, though, is, when I'm too task driven, it leaves people feeling as if I don't care about them. It makes people feel like I care more about the job that they're doing than I do about them. It seems to them that I care more about the music than the musician, or more about the production than worship. And that's totally not the case, but it definitely comes off that way. And so actually last week on the podcast, we had, who do we have on the podcast? Steph Andrews was on the podcast last week, and she talked about noticing who people are, notice who people are becoming, not just what they're doing. And that's basically how you fix that. Really hone in on people. Take time in your rehearsal to focus on your team. Ask people about their lives, pray for them, love them, pastor them. Talk about your congregation too. Discuss opportunities to minister before, during, and after the worship service, and really just put your focus back on people. What I usually try to do is like a 5 or 10 minute huddle right after rehearsal. So, beforehand, we're kind of chatting, cutting up or whatever while we're setting up for rehearsal. We pray, we rehearse. And afterwards, I gather everybody just for a couple of minutes and, hey, how are you doing? What can we be praying for? What's going on in your life? And just have a few minutes together, to really focus in on people. Because like I said, for me, it's really, really easy to focus on the task or on the music rather than the musician. The third reason, and this really goes pretty hand in hand with the last one, is you're not having any fun. That could be why your rehearsals suck. You're just not, you're just not having any fun. And listen, I get it. Sometimes I get bored with music. Sometimes I get bored playing guitar or singing. That shows up in rehearsal, especially when you're playing How He Loves or Good Good Father or Reckless Love for the 200th time. You can pretty easily lose the fun in what you're doing. And so how do you fix that? Well, get creative. Change things up a little bit, create a new version of that old song. Don't stick to just exactly how it was written. Give your team an opportunity to be creative as well. Try singing a new song, add in a new instrument, just change things up a little bit if you're not having any fun. Another thing you could do is do something with your team outside of rehearsal. I encourage that a lot with worship leaders. Have a barbecue or see a movie. I guess I don't know if people are seeing movies right now, but um, do something outside of ministry together, and that's going to show up in your rehearsals and on Sunday morning as well. I have a good friend who always says that um, community off stage breeds chemistry on stage. I think that's absolutely true. So have fun with your team, in rehearsal, outside of rehearsal. Get creative, change things up, and that's going to show up. That's going to make your rehearsals better, going to make your team have a lot more fun. Reason number four that your rehearsals suck, you're tired. You're just tired. And that happens to me. Listen, when I'm tired, I'm pretty much useless. And I know rehearsals are, they're at the end of an already long day. That doesn't help. Sometimes I'm out of steam and just can't get much done. That's never good for rehearsals. If you're just exhausted by the time you get there. So how do you fix that? That's a hard one to fix. It really is. If you have the ability, change your schedule around so that you have some free time before rehearsal. Use that time to take a break, grab a coffee, take a nap if possible. If that's not possible, figure out some ways that maybe you can go to bed a little bit early the night before. Maybe you can, uh, I don't know, figure out how to not be so exhausted. Maybe you can delegate some things so that maybe you don't have to get there so early to set up. Do anything you can to really give yourself some energy, because it really hurt your rehearsals and your ministry if you're just exhausted. I think that's one of the reasons Jesus talks about rest. That's it. It's hard to get things done if you're tired. Lastly, reason number 5, and this is a really, really important one. Reason number 5, your rehearsals suck. You've forgotten why you're there. You've forgotten why you're there. And listen, this ruins rehearsals more than anything else. It's easy to forget your why when you're doing the same thing, week after week. It's easy for rehearsal to just become about a song or a band or pursuing excellence. It's easy, if you forget your why. When it becomes about that, it's easy to want to skip it and stay home and watch Hulu and just hang out. But when you remember your why, you remember that you're there to pastor people and to lead a church and to worship the King of Kings, then it's hard to want to do anything else. So if you've forgotten your why, how do you fix it? Bring up your why every chance you get. Talk about it with your team. Cast vision for Sunday morning. Pray over your church. Celebrate wins. That's a big one. Celebrate wins. Acknowledge what God is doing, on your worship team, in your church, in your personal life. Remember that you're there to minister to God and minister to people, and that rehearsals are a big part of that. And remember also that rehearsals don't just prepare you to worship. Rehearsals are a place for worship. Like, it's a place where you get to go and worship God with the church. It's just not the entire church body like Sunday morning. It's just a segment of it, but it's still worshiping with the church. Listen, y'all, that's it. Those are the 5 things that I found that there are things that I had to change in my life, in my rehearsals. And as I've talked with, worship leaders that I've been coaching, these things come up in their rehearsals as well. 5 reasons your rehearsals might suck. You're unprepared. You're more task driven than people driven. You're not having any fun. You're tired, or you've forgotten why you're there. Sometimes it's a combination of a few of those. And listen to this, fixing your rehearsals will take time. give yourself some grace. Changing your mindset regarding rehearsals may take time too. I used to not enjoy them at all. Now I really value them. There's still times where I wish I could skip it because I'm just tired or something, but um, I really value that rehearsal time because they matter. They prepare me to lead. They're an opportunity for discipleship. And of course, like I said, they're a place for worship. And we as leaders need to capitalize on every part of that. Y'all, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for being part of the worship leader coaching community. If you haven't yet, subscribe to this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. And do me a favor, leave a review for the podcast, a rating and a review. That will really help me get in front of more worship leaders so that we can help more worship leaders go from leading songs to leading people.